7. Please lower the floor and other problems with avocados. Arthur, my first avocado tree, shot up straight up a broomstick with leaves. When he was 4 feet tall, there was but a single trunk, leaves along its entire length. For a tree, the avocado is a very fast-growing specimen, but by the time Arthur reached the stage of needing a lazy Susan to turn him around on, so heavy was his tub becoming, I began to wonder how long this was going to go on. Finally, when he was 6 feet tall, branches shot out about a foot below the ground, barely in time. We had 9-foot ceilings, and I was figuring the odds on which would give first, floor, ceiling, or Arthur. The branches grew, but they drooped, ducking the top of the window, I thought, to get enough light. Arthur acquired a sad, baggy, stoop-shouldered appearance. It was not until my next avocado spread out its first branches in the same sagging fashion that I learned it's the natural posture of an unpruned avocado tree. Susan's folks had previously expressed an interest in the avocado. Their house sits on a sunny knoll. It also has higher ceilings than ours. Arthur would no doubt feel less cramped living with them. Regretfully, we decided to relocate him. As they lived in Pennsylvania, this presented certain new problems, not the least of which was that we didn't keep a tall car in the city. A train, we decided, had the highest ceilings on wheels. Balancing Arthur on a skateboard, we rolled him down to the street corner and hailed a taxi. I opened the door and began to coax him in. The driver turned quickly with a mumbled, "Sorry, I didn't realize the tree was with you," and drove off. Several cabs later, we managed to get the ride to Penn Station. I left Susan parked with the tree on the boarding platform while I went to get the tickets, just to make sure that the ticket agent didn't try to sell me a third one. The ride down was uneventful, except that the conductor looked somewhat askance at me as I stood beneath the shade of my tree in the passageway, observing the passing avocado-less landscape. Arthur moved out to the patio that summer. There he thrived, so much so, in fact, he couldn't be gotten back into the house. With fall and chilly evenings approaching, there seemed to be no solution to his housing problem except to send him off to school. He now resides at the local junior high, where he is a permanent member of the biology class. Avocados came in with the jet set. Although long a favorite staple in much of Central and South America, they did not gain popular recognition in the temperate and northern zones until modern transportation gave them wings. They were too perishable. But once they got air cargo space, they took over. They flocked from Mexico, the West Indies, Guatemala, and then inevitably from California and Florida. The alligator pear, as the avocado used to be known before it was decided that such a nomenclature was not conducive to mass promotion, is one of the most prized of tropical fruits. Discounting for the moment the now ubiquitous citrus fruits, the avocado is usually ranked just below the banana, pineapple, and mango as a tropical fruit crop. I never expected my pits to yield a real crop, but I did toy with the idea of at least supplying the family larder eventually. After all, for the after dinner plantation, avocados are unnatural. For the most part, the avocado pit or seed germinates readily. The plant itself is not too choosy about sun and soil and produces a luxuriant bush or tree. When I first started growing avocados, that was before Eartha hit the ceiling, I thought my biggest problem was going to be simply deciding which variety I wanted most. There are two main species of avocado from which most cultivated varieties derive. Pelsia americana, which originated in Guatemala and West Indies, has a thick, leathery skin and can easily be distinguished from its thin-skinned Mexican relative Pelsia germifolia. The leaves of the latter give off an odor of anise when crushed. The former are odorless. But then there are the hybrids, the Fuelte, for instance, apparently a cross between the Mexican and Guatemalan. There are spring varieties like Sphinx, Blakeman, and Lion. Summer varieties like Dickinson and Taft, fall and winter varieties, and so on. The farther I delved into the subject of avocados looking for a propagation-minded variety, the more confused I became. The nice, simple two-system classification with which everyone started out had somehow gotten lost in a hopeless mass of hybrids and variants. Popeno's Manual of Tropical and Subtropical Fruits, excluding the banana, coconut, pineapple, citrus fruits, olive, and fig. An early classic in the field, published in 1920, mentioned over 150 varieties in the United States alone, and that was before the avocado was popularized. With American agriculturists constantly striving for bigger and more beautiful fruit, who knows how many varieties there are now? Basically, all the after-dinner gardener needs to know, I decided finally, is that the one he picks out of the grocer's basket is most probably from either Florida or California, and that it makes a difference. Florida avocados are usually larger, their skin rougher and darker than the California ones. Their flesh is softer, containing more oil than those from California, and the pit is proportionately smaller. Aside from these characteristics, the two can usually be differentiated simply by their shape. The Florida variety must have been the origin of the name alligator pear. Not only does its rough skin imitate that of the alligator if you squint at it very hard, but it is truly pear-shaped. The California avocado, on the other hand, is much rounder, almost oval in appearance. Without wanting to get caught in the middle of the perennial chamber of commerce combat between Florida and California, in all honesty, I have to note from my experience that the Florida variety germinates much more readily, grows more quickly, and is usually much tastier besides. I had heard that the Indians of Guatemala, from which the best wild avocados come, consider 4 or 5 tortillas served with avocado an unexcelled meal. With the first avocado, Susan dutifully went out for cornmeal and mixed up a tortilla batter while I dug out the pits. She really wanted to serve soup Guatemalan style. There, one is served a big bowl of soup with an avocado next to it. One cuts open the avocado at the table and scoops it out into the hot soup. But I had visions of somebody's spit dropping into the soup. They're very slippery and being scalded beyond all hope of sprouting. I firmly vetoed the soup idea. Lately, we've eaten our avocados simply as guacamole, served in salads or stuffed with shrimp or mandarin orange slices. I pick my avocados from the fruit stand as ripe as I can find, ideally slightly soft to the touch. The pit of the very ripe avocado is sometimes so eager to sprout that it's already begun by the time I open the fruit. Halve an avocado gently, by the way, working in from the outside in a circle to avoid slicing through the pit. Where a pit has already sprouted prior to eviction, I rinse it off in tepid water and plant it immediately. Where, as is more often the case, the pit is a tight brown skinned nut showing no pale shoot between its halves, I rinse it off in tepid water, pat it dry with a soft towel, and let it sit in a warm, dry spot for a day or overnight. I reserved a comfortable kitchen corner, the one Susan had saved for rising bread, as a matter of fact, for my avocado pits. After the pit has dried off for a day, the parchment-like skin surrounding it can be easily peeled away. If, as occasionally happens, this coat is shed as you remove the pit from the fruit, you can skip the drying period and plant it right away. Some home avocado growers advocate sticking toothpicks into their pit and balancing it precautiously, partially submerged across the glass of water. For a first avocado, this is more interesting in that you can watch the roots develop, but if the object is results, the toothpick procedure is more trouble than it's worth. Sometimes the water goes sour, which means not only throwing the pit away but having a miniature swamp on your hands. Another worry is possible injury to the roots in transferring the plant from glass to pot. The simplest method is to plant the pit directly in the pot in which it is to grow. One with a diameter of 7 inches or so is ideal for the first year's growth. Layer the bottom of the pot as with your other plants, then fill it with a mixture of 2/3 potting soil and 1/3 humus, adding a handful of vermiculite. Avocados will grow in almost any soil, but do best in heavy, moist loam. Once I got over my initial fear of injuring young pits, I adopted the practice recommended by the California Experiment Station of cutting a thin sliver of both tip and base of the seed using a single-edged razor blade. The slivers should be no more than an eighth of an inch thick. This surgery isn't essential, but I found it helps speed germination. An avocado pit is planted base, the larger, flatter end, usually slightly indented down, buried about 2/3 into the soil so that the tip is still well exposed. Part of the pit must have access to light, otherwise it will not germinate. According to investigations conducted by scientists at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Beltsville, Maryland, the slight requirement is probably due to action on the pigment called phytochrome in the seed. However, most of their research in the field has been done on Grand Rapids lettuce seeds. The workings of the light-sensitive mechanism are also so esoteric, and the research as yet so inconclusive that aside from unearthing the mistletoe's need to germinate in the dark, obvious even to amateurs, I have not been able to come up with anything more definite than that some seeds need light to germinate and others don't. Avocados do. As soon as it's nestled in, the pit should be doused with tepid water. If the air in your apartment is very dry, invert a clear plastic cup or glass over the pit to help keep moisture in the soil around it. Then sit back and wait about a month for the seed to split, the first sign of germination. Few of my avocado pits fail to germinate at all, but some have taken as long as 3 months to sprout, so be patient. While it sits there looking innocent, the pit is most likely building a good subterranean root system before it makes any growing noises above ground. Once the first sprout of avocado does emerge from the splitting seed and reaches a height of 4 inches or so, I add another layer of humus between half an inch and an inch to cover the pit. The avocado has roots that come close to the surface for nourishment, and they are easily injured by dry soil or sun. The extra layer of humus will ensure sufficient moisture for best growth. Every time one of my avocados reaches a height of 6 inches or so, I begin having troubled dreams about Arthur again. To prune or not to prune, that is the question. In nature, of course, a young tree is rarely pruned, and then only by accident when a passing animal tramples the plant or decides to lunch on the tender young leaves. Man, however, is an incurable improver upon nature, even if his improvements sometimes turn out to be duds. Avocado trees in commercial groves are carefully grafted as well as pruned to produce the biggest, most disease-resistant, easiest to pick avocados. As fruits of better and better design are developed, I strongly suspect them of having less and less taste. Another reason for growing my own, I reminded myself. Still, the fact remains that a pruned tree tends to be stronger and better shaped. The avocados I pruned have remained more sensible than Arthur in their proportions. In fact, they have been shaped to fit specific nooks of the room. Tall and slender for floor models, short and bushy for those on bookshelves or tables. An avocado is often first cut back when the shoot is about 6 inches tall. Trim 2 inches off the top, making a clean diagonal sweep of it. The plant will then look rather barren and hopeless, but in a short while, usually a week or two, a new shoot will develop lower along the stem. New branches will lengthen more slowly than the original sprout, but they should be sturdier and grow more leaves. Later, when the plant has grown to 2 or 3 feet in height, the new top can be pruned again. As smaller branches develop, They may be pruned to force out more branches. In general, the more you prune, the thicker and bushier your plant will grow. It's almost as if, being frustrated in one direction, the avocado fights back with all it's got on other fronts, more determined than ever. A branch may be pruned off entirely if it gets too long or scraggly. The main trunk, however, should not normally be cut back more than a third of its height, although this process may be repeated over and over again. Since it is one of the faster growing tropical trees, as opposed, for instance, to the mango, the avocado will need a larger pot with seasonal regularity. Don't transplant it too often, but the plant's height should not exceed the diameter of its pot by more than 6 times, unless you are purposely trying to stunt the plant to keep it within manageable limits. In that case, continue to cut it back and give it plenty of fertilizer in lieu of the new and improved acreage it's missing out on. Even if you do want to stunt a plant by keeping it in a small pot, it's a good practice to replant it every 2 years or so. Remove it from its quarters, delicately working out as much old soil from between the roots as you can with a dull pencil or a sharp chopstick, and then repot it in the same sized pot using a fresh soil mixture. For large pots, I find pretzel or potato chip cans quite handy. There are also a number of attractive commercial tubs made from redwood or asbestos. Whatever you choose, remember that the avocado prefers a rich, loamy soil. Since potting soil can be expensive in quantities large enough to fill a pretzel can, I took to using regular soil from a country cousin's garden, supplementing it with fertilizer. However, I soon discovered that regular garden soil tends to pack when confined to large pots. So now we've started eating peanuts bought in the shell a few weeks before transplanting time comes due. After a good case of indigestion, I've usually accumulated enough peanut shells to mix in liberally with the soil. They make a good mulch, and as time goes in, their decay leaves the soil loamy, so the avocado roots have romping room. As for coaxing fruit from even a large indoor avocado tree, however, I gave up on that idea quite early in the game. Even Arthur, a veteran of summer camp, has not yet borne fruit, I'm told. Realistically speaking, I have learned since my early plantation dreams, it is highly improbable that he will. The indoor gardener just can't supply the conditions a tree needs to flower and bear. Friends farther south have set trees out for the summer, sometimes getting them to bloom and even produce some stunted fruit. Myself, I've come to the conclusion it will probably always be easier to buy my avocados than wait for my Arthur to oblige with any one-upmanship over my friends' trees. Besides, with the head start avocados had on the more esoteric or difficult tropical fruits converging on the country, I imagine there will soon be enough of them to go around, and then some. which is perhaps why new guises for avocados are cropping up all over. For years, South American Indians have rubbed avocado pulp into their scalp to prevent baldness. And as the old saying goes, have you ever seen a bald Indian? Now, American cosmetic manufacturers are making extensive use of the avocado, not as a talisman against baldness, at least not yet, but in a variety of more subtle but equally effective beauty aids calling for an oil base. Avocado oil is one of the finest and most delicate of the natural vegetable oils. Manufacturers in other fields are experimenting with its use, and one can occupy oneself quite a while guessing what they'll come up with. Meanwhile, back in the culinary field, where I really feel the luscious pear belongs, I've been noticing lately a veritable outbreak of avocado recipes. So don't be surprised if one of these days that nice pistachio colored ice cream you bring home turns out to be a popular Brazilian import and not among Howard Johnson's 28, namely avocado ice cream.